Poets are writing all the time, so when I'm walking down the street to buy milk, I'm probably writing a poem. And what you see at the end is the tip of the iceberg. There's a term in art which is called ekphrasis, which is writing poetry about art, or writing poetry about inscriptions, or writing poetry about churches. And I became very interested in this concept because I didn't want to write poems that conformed to this narrative structure. I wanted to relate poetry to something else.
It was obviously a project that I was aware of and looking at in admiration for its scale and its importance to London. And then we got the call to compete for Phase 4, which included 3 buildings and the amenities underground. The idea of taking another great tradition of architecture, which is to do with letter carving and words, I thought that actually what we should look at were words. And the question then arises, how on earth do you create depth of meaning and substance out of that? So I thought that we needed to engage a poet.
They wanted me to do something that was related to the environment of the development and to its history and to the landscape around it, and that each wall had a different theme.
The question was, how do we make it something that can resonate with the public, with the passerby, and what story you want to tell? Those are the sort of instincts that derive the idea for One Grenadier Gardens.
Anthology is Greek for poems made into a garland, a patchwork of poems, and I thought that was the perfect solution, to have my own poetry woven with others. I felt I was delivering a kind of massive bouquet of blooms, which are actually words to the people who are reading it.
Movement is what I wanted to portray, and having got the idea of the words kind of flowing through Pellé's genius, we had to then work with the technology of how that could be translated into CNC cutting.
The lines can go from one row of the elevation to the other. You can read them like you would in a book. It's quite a long journey. You have to start at the beginning, you have to walk along to get to the end of the other line, then you have to go to the beginning again, start the second line and go along, which is a lovely experience of the site in its own right. But how are you going to not swamp the viewer? You have to give them a role. So I thought, why not lay one line under the other? So you can stand there and read a word from the first line of one stanza, a word from the second, and a word from the third. And you can make your own poem.
You're working on Chelsea Barracks has been an incredible privilege because of the scale, but ultimately, really the sort of sense of leaving a legacy of urban design as well as architecture.
Working on this project with Chelsea Barracks means a lot of things to me. I have been scared about being a poet nearly every day since I was 25. And to have my poem carved into a material like stone is a defining moment for me, because it reminds me that poetry is eternal. In the garden of the sun, russet carnelians flare. Lapis lazuli in silver shoots. I have woven a garland of verse as far from the town as a shout can carry.